We begin our story with the shot of a book, which seems to be used as a record of sorts. The person leaving it behind does not think that it will do much good, but he feels that it will at least help him organize his thoughts. Now, our hero tells us the events of his past that led him to this day. It happened right after spring break in high school, when he was in class and staring off into space. At that very moment, a sudden surge of energy took over, and then our hero vanished from the scene. Now, he finds himself inside some kind of massive room, which is completely empty. As he tries to figure out where he has arrived, he is greeted by a fairy girl who says that this place is called Elysium. The fairy girl is the spirit in charge of this place, and her name is Epsilon. Our hero says hi, and introduces himself as Kurosaki Yoshitsune. The moment he says, the Epsilon completes some kind of registration, but he does not know what this means, so he gets confused. Now, there is an awkward silence, and Kurosaki has no idea what to say next. He even thinks about making some kind of small talk with the fairy girl, such as asking her about the weather and stuff. But that's not how he should be playing this. He can't believe that Epsilon is actually a spirit, because she is quite curvy for that. Kurosaki wonders if he should be saying such things to a girl he's just met, especially because he's never complimented women before in his life. Now, Epsilon wants to know if our hero has any other questions he would like to ask her. If that is not the case, then she will transfer him to a normal space. Kurosaki gets to thinking and wonders what the whole thing regarding his registration was. However, he takes too much time in responding to the fairy girl, so she begins the transfer process. He asks her to wait a second, but it's too late to make amends now. Now, we see the king of another world talking to Kurosaki and some other people, referring to them as heroes. Upon closer inspection, our hero can see that he and his classmates have all been summoned to this unknown place. He has no idea what's going on, and then he notices a knight standing in the room. The design of his armor reminds Kurosaki of the famous role-playing games he used to have back in Japan. He needs to check if this is real life, so he pinches himself to see if all is well. As expected, he is indeed in real life, and not in some kind of dream. While he tries to still digest what has happened to him, his classmates seem to be excited to be summoned as heroes. They even wonder if they will get some kind of cheat skills to survive in this new world. But then Kurosaki wonders if there can be so many main characters in this story. In light novels and manga comics, there's usually only one hero who gets preferred treatment, so Kurosaki has to see if that will also be the case over here. Now, a mage asks the kids to come this way because they need to assess their abilities. Some more classmates start to get hyped up, but Kurosaki only looks at them as suckers because they should not think that this will be an easygoing lifestyle. On top of that, everyone seems to be happy about this fantasy situation they've found themselves in. Nobody really seems to care about the dangers associated with this life. And then Kurosaki notices something else. There are no girls here even though his class was filled with them. Something odd is definitely going on, and then we shift to one of the boys getting appraised. Kurosaki learns that there are game stats in this world, and the boys summoned here are more like players, with some of them even having an additional file and a class. A boy named Watanabe is told that he is a mid-class hero with the swordsman class, and he seems to be delighted about it. Basically, those with a class are considered to be mid-rank, while those without one are typically low-rank heroes. It's Kurosaki's turn now, so he waits eagerly as he gets assessed, and then he sees a symbol in front of him. As per what the fairy girl had told him earlier, Kurosaki states that he has the ability to look at the foreign language of this world and instantly translate it in his head. If that is the case, then he is reading this symbol as an indicator that he has not been given a class. This means that he is a low-rank hero, and life is being very cruel to him already. Now, we see 5 other boys named Ito, Tanaka, Suzuki, Satu and Takashi, all of whom are also low-rank heroes with Kurosaki. This means that out of 20 boys, there are only 6 low-rank heroes, which is rather embarrassing for Kurosaki. Now, a cute and curvy maid leads the heroes to their mansion. But the one where the low-rank heroes are going to stay at is very old and almost broken down. Kurosaki and the others most definitely do not like what they see, and then he takes a look inside. The rooms are horrible as well, which makes this mansion look more like a prison than anything else. In comparison, the mid-rank heroes have gotten the exact opposite kind of treatment with an extremely fancy mansion. Plus, they also get a whole supply of cute and curvy maid girls, so it almost feels as if they have been given a ticket straight to heaven. The claim is that such luxuries are being given to the heroes in order to make them more motivated and competitive. But to Kurosaki, this is more of unjust treatment. The loser boys are taken to the cafeteria of their mansion, where they meet the head maid known as Sylvia. She is cute and curvy to a whole other level, but she is not here to address any intrusive thoughts. Instead, she is going to explain to the loser boys why they have been brought here. To put it simply, they need to conquer the dungeon below them. This is because the country, and even the entire world, is run on the concept of dungeons. Whether it's food, fuel, or any other kind of necessity, all of it comes from the dungeons. In short, Kurosaki has figured out that the people of this world want him and the other loser boys to go and fetch these items for them. Of course, they are trying to make it sound nice by saying the heroes must conquer the dungeon. But if we are to look at it neutrally, then these boys have been kidnapped without any regard and are now being forced to do hard labor. What's worse is that Kurosaki has heard that there is no way for him to go back to his original world. So he is stuck here forever. At least he is getting paid for this. Otherwise, the kingdom would have had to face an intense rebellion. Sylvia continues to explain how, as the loser boys pass through the dungeon, they will gain points which can be exchanged for various items and services. The items may include strong weapons, armor, useful tools, or even an improvement in the food being served to them at their mansion. Of course, there is an even bigger prize in store for the loser boys. So Sylvia claps her hands and brings in a whole gang of cute and curvy maid girls. Sylvia explains that the big bumper prize is a personal and pure maid girl with whom these loser boys can do whatever they want. Kurosaki has realized that this is the biggest prize that is being used to tempt the loser boys. Even though he knows these maids are being used as bait, there's no denying the fact that he and the other boys are in puberty right now. This means that they have way too many intrusive thoughts going on inside their heads, which led to all of them saying yes to the mission without even batting an eye. Kurosaki admits that he has been considerably enticed due to the maid girls on offer. But that does not change the fact that the dungeon is going to be a dangerous mission for him and the other loser boys. As he lies down on his bed and considers everything that has happened, he states that he does not know how to fight at all. Sure, he wants a personal maid girl, but he will need to survive the dungeon in order for that to happen. Suddenly, he hears knocking on his door and wonders who it could be. He asks the person to come in, and it happens to be a cute and curvy maid girl named Anissa. She says that she has come here to take care of Kurosaki, which can only mean one thing to our hero. He realizes that the people of the kingdom want an answer from him and the other loser boys as soon as possible, and this would be the best way to do it. He knows this is trap, but since he has never been touched by a woman before, he lacks the power to block his intrusive thoughts. What follows is an intense and shady session with the maid girl, and then our hero learns that since the men of this world are not fertile enough, these girls come to work as maids to gain the seeds of the heroes being summoned here. This means he can do as much as he wants to these maid girls, and a week passes by like this. For what it's worth, Kurosaki and the other loser boys make sure not to skip out on training. The food isn't that bad either, so this is more of a comfortable life. However, it does beg the question if these loser boys are being turned into domesticated breeding horses. This also explains why only the boys were summoned to this world and not the girls. Of course, they have also been busy getting freaky with the maid girls, and our hero is no exception to that. He gives the example of a maid girl named Rini, who is a low-rank maid assigned to the low-rank heroes. They can do whatever they want to her, wherever they want, and as many times as they want. These things are obviously amazing to Kurosaki. But then he remembers that Rini and Anissa are both of the same rank. He starts to have fantasies about her while he is with Rini, and she is able to understand this instantly. Kurosaki worries that he has messed up here, but she says that it's fine because Anissa is cute. Rini then points out that Anissa also seems to like Kurosaki, so he should snatch her up before someone else does it. In addition to this, the compatibility with a maid girl increases when you engage in more intrusive thoughts with her, which means that Kurosaki will have a better chance of getting Anissa pregnant if he makes her his exclusive maid. The only way to do this is to go to the dungeon, so Kurosaki decides it's time to step up. The days of training have finally ended, and today, the loser boys will be stepping into the dungeon for the first time. They are to step on some podiums, after which flashes of light is to consume them as part of some teleportation magic. Kurosaki takes a look at his supplies and can see that they are meant only for low-class heroes. Some of the mid-rank heroes even make fun of him for roaming around with a stick and a wooden shield. They call him lame and state that his weapons are a perfect match for him since he does not have a class. All of this is just idle talk, and our hero tries his best not to let the words of others affect him. He takes a few steps ahead and then enters the portal. Kurosaki states that at first, he was really suspicious about everything, especially because he was taking the whole thing casually. However, now that he has a goal in mind, he is going to become a lot more serious about his mission. The goal is, of course, to make Anissa his exclusive maid, and he is going to earn so many points that he will be able to free her from her low-rank status. He clearly likes her, and if it so happens that she also likes him, then he is going to make sure that no other boy can have her. Now, Kurosaki takes a deep breath in and out, after which he sets out on his mission. It only takes a second for him to get teleported to the dungeon, and he is already getting an ominous vibe from the place. Kurosaki checks out the walls and learns that they are made of real stone. From the looks of it, it's almost as if he is in an actual role-playing game. The suspicious thing, though, is that it's just our hero over here, and none of the other boys have come to this area. This could mean that each of the loser boys have been teleported to different sections inside the dungeon. Kurosaki feels like this is becoming a bit too familiar to the games he used to play back in Japan, and he wonders if he is in some kind of tutorial. The moment he says this, he hears a voice asking him if he would like to begin his tutorial. Now, our hero thinks back to the fairy girl Epsilon, who instantly comes back to him and offers a brief history about the planet of Elysium. Basically, the civilization that controlled this world was far more advanced than the humans of Earth. But around 500 years ago, the entire civilization came crumbling down as it fought its last ever war. As expected, this ended in a global catastrophe, and Epsilon's word is as good as gold because she is the information terminal of this world. Of course, Kurosaki asks her how the existing people of this world have come to be if everyone else lost their lives to war. That's when the fairy girl explains that Elysium is not the name of this planet, but rather of a leisure facility which has been styled after a fantasy dungeon. This means that our hero has been summoned to a facility inside another world, and not the main world in itself. It turns out that some people had fled to this facility during the war so that they could enjoy themselves one last time. However, they were also able to use this dungeon to survive back then and even now. So, for 500 years, the survivors of war have been living inside this dungeon dome and are under the rule of a monarchy. All of this does sound interesting to Kurosaki, especially because of how society has still been able to function for so long over here. However, he is a bit doubtful as to whether this place was actually made for entertainment purposes. After all, it seems to have a lot of resources and facilities, so maybe it's more than a standard theme park. Epsilon explains to him that Elysium was built with the best technology the world had to offer in order to provide the best customer satisfaction. She also states that the system uses some kind of perpetual energy generator, which is why the power never seems to run out over here. The fairy girl looks like she is going to go off on some kind of lecture. So Kurosaki stops her before she can move any further. Epsilon wants to know if our hero has any other questions for her. So he brings up the point about summoning people from another world. The fairy girl states that heroes are summoned from the nearest parallel world in order to challenge their dungeons. At present, there is a setting called Endless, which is in the process of being executed. What's more is that heroes are considered to be dispensable because the system had never even considered repatriation after the summoning process. Kurosaki does not like the fact that a cute fairy girl, such as Epsilon, is saying such savage and shady things, especially when it heavily implies that heroes are simply being kidnapped and used as pawns in the games of some people inside a dome. Kurosaki asks this question to Epsilon, but she is unable to provide an answer to it. This is indeed a horrible system that even the Romans and their Colosseum would find a bit over the top. Anyway, since he can't help the new life he has been forced into, our hero goes about his business inside the dungeon. He comes across a slime monster and defeats it with ease since it is a weak beast. He was able to do this with his fists, and then Epsilon tells him that he has reached level 2 as a player. Kurosaki reveals that he managed to achieve this after defeating around 30 slime monsters, so it really is a lot of work. He makes sure to pick up the drop item, which is an energy gem, and then he comments that these slimes are so weak that defeating them feels like a day job. Suddenly, he comes across a treasure chest, and the fairy girl congratulates him because finding such an item on the very first floor of the dungeon is considered to be extremely rare. Kurosaki goes on to open the treasure chest, and he is blessed with an additional item. It looks like some kind of sword. But then Epsilon tells Kurosaki to proceed with caution because the treasure chests could also be traps. Our hero states that the fairy girl should really be telling him such things earlier on. But all's well that ends well. Anyway, Kurosaki takes a look at the requirements that have been given to him for earning the class of adventurer. He has fulfilled 2 of them by defeating slime monsters and opening a treasure chest. The final thing he needs to do is survive and come back from the dungeon alive. Now, he explains to us that while he did get the raw end of the bargain by not receiving a class upon being summoned, it was just a matter of sheer luck. There happen to be some types of classes that can be learned when a hero fulfills all the right criteria, just like Kurosaki did now. Kurosaki also tells us that he did not want to take the risk of random learning, so he settled on gaining a safer class, which is that of an adventurer. This class will make it easier for him to defeat the dungeon because he will be able to fight with weapons, use some magic, and also gain search and exploration skills. This is great for him since he is an introvert. But the problem is that adventurers are jacks of all trades and masters of none. This means that they are no match for a person who specializes in one particular field. Despite such a restriction, it does not matter to Kurosaki because he was never going to devote everything he had into clearing the dungeon. His current objective is just to make Anissa his exclusive maid, and if things go well enough, he would like to make her his maid wife as well. Now, our hero wonders how he is going to get back to the dome, so Epsilon explains that she can do it for him as long as he is not in combat or affected by any special statuses. It's super convenient for him, so he tells the fairy girl to do it this very moment. Soon enough, Kurosaki is back to the dome, and he heads to his mansion with Epsilon. It's night time, and the fairy girl asks our hero if he would like to become an adventurer class now. He says yes, and the request is completed in an instant. He does not feel any kind of change yet, but figures that he will only be able to see the difference tomorrow in the dungeon. There is one problem though, which is that his elephant is awakening his trunk a lot more than usual. Kurosaki really wants to get with a girl this very moment, and his intrusive thoughts seem to be working on overdrive. He hears some knocking on the door, so he goes to open it and finds both Anissa as well as Rini outside. The maid girls both look frightened for some reason, but Kurosaki wants to know why they are here. Rini and Anissa express relief over seeing him back, so he wonders if people had thought he lost his life because he came back so late. Rini says that if Kurosaki were to come back late, then he should at least inform her and Anissa once he's back. By not doing so, he will make them both worry about him, especially Anissa. Both the girls seem to be a bit embarrassed because they have exposed their feelings towards Kurosaki. But he could not care less about such things because his elephant is still raging. He grabs both his maid girls and brings them into his room, after which he locks the door to make sure nobody interrupts them during their shady activities. What follows is a rather intense session that allows Kurosaki to unleash the wrath of his elephant and his trunk. He wakes up the next morning to the sounds of sparrows chirping, but there seems to be some kind of problem. Despite going at it for so long the entire night, his elephant still seems to have water in the trunk. It's quite weird because even young teenagers don't carry this kind of excitement with them. Epsilon shows up to explain that this is a side effect of his level increasing. The fairy girl says that since Kurosaki has grown in terms of physical and spiritual strength, even his natural impulses have grown to a temporary level. She then asks our hero if he would like to use any suppression countermeasures, but he says no to them. Epsilon states that Kurosaki will need to be careful about this, because it could trigger a berserk mentality in him, which means that he will be in a perpetual state of intrusive thoughts. Our hero could also suffer from extreme aggression, so he will need to exercise caution moving forward. Now, we learn that Kurosaki is with another girl named Alice who can't see Epsilon, so he tells her to ignore his words and continue with their dirty business. After a heavy session with her, we move down to the cafeteria where everyone is having their food. Some of the boys are discussing how slimes are super weak and can be taken down with just one punch. Keeping this in mind, it feels as if the dungeon is like some kind of cakewalk. Of course, Kurosaki thinks that these boys are just getting carried away with the momentum of their new lives. As long as they don't get tripped up, things should be fine. But the loser boys are pretty much like the Three Stooges at this point. Ito stays away from them, so Kurosaki can't figure out what his deal is. And then there's Tanaka, who just looks like he's given up on everything, although that is not really his fault. After all, not everyone is able to take the life of a monster, no matter how weak it is. Modern Japan never had such philosophies, so to take the lives of so many slime monsters can leave trauma inside people like Tanaka. Now, it's time for food, but the meal that has been given to Kurosaki is very basic. It's nothing like what was being served to him the previous week, so he asks what's going on. Anissa tells him that he was being given yummy food for the past week because he was training and learning about her world. This means that the treatment was basically to motivate the boys to do well during their dungeon training. It's a bit of a scam in Kurosaki's eyes, but he knows that he has to make Anissa his exclusive maid, so he figures he'll keep saving up for now. Now, it's time for the second day of dungeon diving, but our hero has already grown tired of whacking slime monsters. He wants to go to the second floor, but he does not know where it is, and can only hope to find an entrance while walking around. Now, Epsilon asks Kurosaki if he would like to enable auto mapping, and he says yes. The map shows a lot of empty spaces, so our hero wonders how big this dungeon really is. But the fairy girl can't answer that question because it is confidential information. Kurosaki is not impressed by her reluctance to answer him, but he understands that she must be under some kind of obligation, so he asks her how big the first floor is. Epsilon states that it is 100 meters by 100 meters, and it is called Evergreen. Kurosaki is a bit surprised to see that a dungeon has a name, but the fairy girl states that its design was based off the motif of bountiful nature. This makes Kurosaki wonder if Floor 2 will look different from Floor 1, but there is only one way to find out. It turns out that there are other dungeons such as Grand Blue, Last Heaven, Sun Scarlet, and Sky Forest, but the easiest one is Evergreen, so Kurosaki will focus on beating it first. With that, our hero locates an upward passage to the second floor and bounces his way up a level. Kurosaki is having a field day with the new skills he's picked up, and he even integrates them to make sure he can bounce off the walls. It's amazing for him. especially because he can now use the moves Accelerate and Leap. Of course, he feels that better names for these moves would be Control and Gravity, backed by Control Repulsion, which should help him perform all kinds of jumps. The problem is that he jumps so much that he starts to feel dizzy. Epsilon comes once again to explain that if Kirasaki's MP starts to run out, then he will start to feel dizziness and might even feel like throwing up. Our hero reminds the fairy girl one more time that she needs to say these things to him in advance. Otherwise, he will never be able to learn from his mistakes. Anyway, Epsilon states that Kirasaki will regain all of his MP once he levels up. Also, mana can recover over time as well, and we can see it when Kirasaki activates an invisible barrier to protect himself from a sneaky slime attack. Our hero starts to feel a bit better, and then he realizes that the mapping ability he just saw was his own skill and not Epsilon's. Then, he uses his Regen skill to heal his wounds. This is absolutely important for someone who is going on solo missions. Then, Kirasaki remembers that his stamina from the last night could have been due to the Regen skill activating. Plus, this skill affects those nearby as well, so it explains how the maid girls were also able to go all night without getting worn out. As he levels up, Kirasaki finally gains access to the standard storage box from another dimension. It's incredibly useful, especially if you have too many things to carry around with you. On top of this, all of Kirasaki's magical and physical abilities have improved by an impressive margin, meaning he is finally becoming more of a mid-rank hero. However, the free club weapon he got earlier has now broken down, probably due to it not being able to withstand Kirasaki's new powers. He decides to pull out the magic sword he got from the treasure chest earlier and uses it to slice down some slimes. It's an impressive tool for sure, but the issue is that it takes up a lot of mana while using it, so Kirasaki will have to be more careful. Epsilon agrees with his words, so he tells the fairy girl to take him back to the mansion so that he can go and get a backup weapon. She commences the logout procedure, and then Kirasaki heads over to the weapons shop, which deals exclusively with hero consignments. He checks out the massive variety of weapons on display and comments that he can find anything he likes over here. The shop owner shows up and greets Kirasaki, after which he asks what he can do for him. Kirasaki shows him the beaten-up club he had gotten at the beginning of his journey, and says that he would like to replace it. He also wants a fresh pair of shoes for some reason, and then the shop owner gives him some suggestions. He states that he does have iron clubs, but he would recommend a warhammer instead. The idea of such a weapon sounds cool to Kirasaki, so he is told to wait for a bit. Now, in the process of checking out all the items inside the shop, our hero becomes quite friendly with the shop owner. He reveals to Kirasaki that the other hero boys are actually huge jerks, and he is the only one who has been nice to talk to. The shop owner is also a soldier, so he states that he's not a slave over here, so he should be treated with more respect. Kirasaki can understand his frustrations, even though the soldier is not supposed to be complaining to another hero. He also reveals that Kirasaki is the first hero from this round of boys to come to his shop. Normally, such information should not be revealed to those who are coming from another world, because it basically proves that heroes are used as disposable pawns. Kirasaki is glad that he got some proof of these theories that were given to him by Epsilon, and he figures that work ethics are not valued in this dome. He then takes a look at his warhammer and likes it a lot. He picks it up along with a new pair of boots, and the soldier decides to give him fresh stock from the warehouse. He asks Kirasaki to wait at the shop for a bit while he goes and gets it, and our hero agrees. While he waits for the soldier to return, Kirasaki starts to hear some shady noises. As he pays closer attention, he can figure out that intrusive thoughts are being acted on somewhere. The source of the noise is a mystery door, so he goes ahead and opens it to find a rather shocking sight. This is when he sees that the girls of his class are engaging with the men of this fantasy world. It's almost like an assembly line, the way turns are being taken, and this is to raise compatibility. Of course, It's not like Kurosaki cares for any of these schoolgirls, because he had also just recently shifted to their class, and he comments that such things are just the way of the world. Now, the shop owner returns and catches our hero in the act. He laments the fact that Kurosaki has seen his own people being treated as slaves, but since he himself is not the most chivalrous person on the planet, he simply asks the soldier how the girls from Japan measure up to the girls from this dome. They then decide to have a group session, and it turns out that the girl is actually the soldier's exclusive summoned heroine. Apparently, the men from this world can buy girls that have been summoned from other worlds with soldier points. Since the men from the dome have low fertility, they try to raise their compatibility with girls from other worlds by engaging in intrusive thoughts with them as many times as they can. Kurosaki is made to believe that he was allowed to get it on with the shop owner's exclusive girl because he believed our hero would not be able to get her pregnant due to low compatibility. However, Epsilon revealed that this assumption was incorrect. Since both Kurosaki and this slave girl came from the same world, the chances of him getting her pregnant was actually a lot higher. It also looks like the heroine girls are put under some kind of mind control spell. But Kurosaki does not want to get into the details of it because it could cause problems for him. It's best for him to focus on aspects that directly impact him, so he decides to go home and get freaky with his maid girls. With that, he bids farewell to the shop owner, who has most definitely become his new buddy. It seems to be a comfortable life for Kurosaki, and then he figures that he will go to the dungeon again the next day. The next day, Kurosaki uses his new war hammer to the test and achieves a whole new level of power. He smashes through slime monsters as if they're nothing, and by the end of it, Epsilon congratulates him for reaching level 3. Sadly, our hero is growing tired of defeating slimes, and he wants to go down to the real second floor, not the one he thought he was going to after using up all his mana. At the same time, he worries that the monsters he runs into over there might be too tough for him to defeat. The fairy girl tells him that the monsters on the second floor are all at level 2, which means that they will have all the baseline stats of a player at level 2. Since our hero is at level 3, he can go ahead and give it a shot. With that, Kurosaki finally enters the second floor of the dungeon, and it looks like an open space. He is a bit confused as he can also see a clear open sky, so he asks if this is some kind of display on a screen. Epsilon explains that this is not some kind of illusion, and is actually real life itself. Starting with the second floor, all the areas will be public, so Kurosaki will need to be a lot more careful moving forward. He asks if this also means that he will be running into other heroes as well, which implies that it's possible for players to end each other in the process. Of course, it's not like Kurosaki wants to do such a thing himself, but he does have to keep such things in mind if he is to survive the dungeon. Now, he can see something charging at him, and it looks like a deadly monster. It's Kurosaki's first experience with a second-floor monster, so he gets ready to tackle it with all he's got. The beast is shown to be an overgrown chicken, and it looks quite dangerous, but all it takes is one smack from Kurosaki's war hammer, and the beast is taken down with ease. What's even better is the fact that upon getting ended, the monster instantly turns into meat. Seeing this makes Kurosaki realize why the dungeon is considered to be the lifeline of the Dome people. Epsilon shows up and explains that the second floor is filled with all kinds of monsters that can be used for their meat. Since he does not need to skin these beasts, Kurosaki simply adds the meat to his storage box. This floor is also filled with pigs, sheep, and cows, so there is a lot of meat on offer here. These monsters are not very strong, and they drop more energy gems than the slimes, so it motivates Kurosaki to grind harder than ever. Now, we move back to the mansion, and this time, we are looking at the one for the mid-rank heroes. We see a couple of boys talking about their friends Yamamoto and Nakamura who have said that they will not be joining them today. The reason for this is that they want to stay back and act on their intrusive thoughts with their maid girls. We learn that these boys are Kobayashi, who is a mage, and Katu, who is a priest. They argue about the need to do shady things with maid girls all the time, even though Katu does admit that it's an amazing feeling. The boys discuss how even in this mid-hero gang, there are sides being formed, with one side being the proactive group, which wants to clear the dungeon, and the other side being the good times group, which could not care less about what happens in the dungeon. Kobayashi seems to have a suspicion about the hero system because something is off about it. Katu asks what he means by this, but the mage boy is not able to explain it properly to him. It's like the heroes are misunderstanding something about their situation, or even being misled by the people of this dome. Katu thinks that Kobayashi is heading toward the conspiracy theory route, but the mage boy says that they should not complain about anything because they are getting food, shelter, and maid girls as well. It's a paradise for them, so there should not be any reason for them to risk their lives in the dungeons every single day. Katu now says that his exclusive maid is actually the daughter of a noble. It seems sincere enough for a noble family to just hand over their daughter this way to a hero in exchange for summoning him over here. However, Kobayashi says that this sounds a bit too convenient for them. After all, the people of this world look they're a bit too used to such things happening over here. But Katu tells the mage boy that he's simply overthinking it. He then says that Kobayashi might be homesick because he is missing his girlfriend. The priest boy says that Kobayashi should just forget about her as she might already be cheating on him. The mage boy calls Katu a jerk for saying that, but Katu doubles down on his words by asking if he would even want to go back to Japan if he had the choice to do so. They can act on their intrusive thoughts with cute and curvy maid girls as many times as they want. But Kobayashi still feels that something is off. Anyway, Katu tells his friend to just focus on positive thoughts and earn as many hero points as they can get. New maids are going to be expensive, so they need to put in their best efforts. However, we learn that Kobayashi's girlfriend has also been summoned here and is being used as a slave girl by the prince. Now, we move back to Kurosaki, who has accumulated over 300 hero points due to his recent exploits on the second floor. It has only been one day of grinding for him, so he is glad he went over to this floor. Our hero's goal has been achieved now, and he can easily make Anissa his exclusive maid. Epsilon also congratulates him for getting what he wanted, although it is a bit anticlimactic. Kurosaki proceeds to ask his shop owner buddy about buying Anissa, so he gets the paperwork done as soon as possible. In a little bit, he will be getting the choker that will prove his ownership of Anissa, along with a ring that is paired to it. Our hero is very happy about this, so he decides to share some of his meat with the soldier buddy. He shows a massive steak and says that it can be shared with the other soldiers as well. The shop owner can't believe that it is of such a high quality and asks if it's okay for him to take it. Kurosaki has no problem with this because there's a lot more where that came from. The soldier buddy is extremely grateful to Kurosaki for doing this, and then he says that since Kurosaki will have to wait till the collar is ready, he won't have much to do. In that case, he asks him if he would like to go a couple of rounds with his slave girl, to which Kurosaki says yes without any hesitation. The soldiers enjoy the meat that has been given to them, but they feel like it's lame for them to get all this food without having to give anything in return for it. They eventually decide that the gift of meat should be repaid in kind. Once he's done with the shop owner's maid, Kurosaki is offered one of his classmates to keep as his personal slave. Her name is Shinano, and she is not popular with the soldiers because her soft pillows are not fluffy enough for them. Kurosaki does think it's a bit odd for him to get hold of a slave girl just in exchange for some meat, but he gives Shinano a trial run with everyone watching around him. Things work out, so Kurosaki becomes Shinano's new owner, but she does not talk at all, almost as if her intelligence level has been lowered. It leads Kurosaki to believe that she is being suppressed or brainwashed, but it's not like he can do anything about it, so he decides to take her back home with him. Here, he happily introduces Shinano to Sylvia, but she does not seem to be very thrilled to have her in the mansion. Kurosaki wants to know what's the issue with this, So the head maid says that a heroine has never been brought to this mansion before. Our hero asks her if she can do something about it, but she says that it's not really within her authority to do something like this. Of course, Kurosaki will not take no for an answer, so he makes an intimidating pose in front of Sylvia. She is left with no choice, so she does as our hero says, but only in exchange for some extremely shady sessions. Kurosaki eventually finds out that maids who reach the age of 30 without a master are driven out of the castle, so Sylvia was starting to get worried. Luckily for her, Kurosaki wanted to make her a maid wife right from the start, because he can't say no to a curvy body like hers. After tons of intrusive thoughts and shady activities, Sylvia gets to work and turns Shinano into a maid at the mansion. Kurosaki watches on as Sylvia explains to Shinano how to wash the dishes and her master's clothes, and it leads him to understand that Shinano can still follow orders, even though her mind has been wiped out. In that case, he can safely leave her to Sylvia and hope that Shinano ends up enjoying her life as his maid slave. Of course, there is something more important for Kurosaki to take care of, so he heads towards Anissa and tells her that he has something to show her. It's the slave choker along with the master ring, and it puts an expression of shock into Anissa's eyes. She asks Kurosaki if it's to make a maid girl his exclusive slave, but the look on her face worries our hero. He asks Anissa if she did not want to become his exclusive maid, and then it hits her that Kurosaki has his eyes on her. She confirms this with her master, and he says that is the obvious thing for him to do. This makes Anissa so happy that she has tears in her eyes now. As a matter of fact, the other maid girls also gather around her and congratulate her for becoming an exclusive maid. Kurosaki holds Anissa close to him and says that she only belongs to him now. She says yes without a doubt to her new master, and the other maid girls just stand there and watch. Sylvia is quite jealous of the couple, and so is Rini. But it's hard to say what Shinano is feeling. What follows is an extremely shady and intense session, after which Kurosaki states that he slept quite well. He says that Anissa was really cute with him last night, and it felt good to get busy with just one girl. Harems are good, but sometimes you need to have an intimate moment as well. He then notices Anissa in her maid outfit cleaning the mansion, so he asks her why she is working. Since he has claimed her, she does not need to work as a maid anymore. She reveals that she does not hate doing maid chores, and since Kurosaki will be out in the dungeon the whole day, she will not have anything to do either. This way, she will keep herself occupied, so she asks her master if this is fine with him. He has no issue with this at all, but our hero does realize the need to make sure none of the other men have a go at his exclusive maid. Kurosaki goes to the cafeteria to announce that Anissa is only for him and no one else. But even after doing this, there are a few men who may not listen to him due to jealousy. Luckily, Kurosaki gives them some meat to win their favor, and it all works out for the best. However, there is one incident where the fat kid Tanaka tries to have his way with Shinano. He is one of the other low-rank heroes, so he is easy to forget, and he might have gotten confused or something regarding Shinano, even though she is also Kurosaki's exclusive maid. Fortunately, the soldiers came running to the scene and apprehended Tanaka before he could do anything to Shinano. The fat boy gets thrown into a prison for his shady actions, and Kurosaki does not seem to have a problem with that at all. Later at night, Rini also tries to get our hero to buy her, but he makes her wait for it. Then, Epsilon tells Kurosaki that Shinano is not currently in her fertilization period, so she asks if he would like to have her magically fertilized. He says no and would prefer to suppress the fertilization to avoid any drama. The fairy girl explains how she can suppress this process by holding back the embryos before they could get implanted into the uterus. This way, Kurosaki does not have to worry about getting Shinano or any of his other maid girls pregnant. Epsilon keeps explaining how she goes about her fertilization tactics. But our hero is clearly more interested in his shady acts with the maid girls. There is one big issue, though, for Kurosaki, and that's the weekly status checkup. He fears that his class will be discovered, which will then have him promoted to a mid-rank hero. Of course, he has no desire to live inside the castle, as he is very happy with the way things are in the mansion. He also wonders how much money he would need to support 2 wives and any children that come from them. Kirasaki's dream life is to have a ridiculous number of kids and take care of them all once he grows old. Now, he goes back to the dungeon on his 4th day and finds a whole range of cows to slaughter. In this world, beef is considered to be more valuable than chicken or pork, just like in Japan. This is why Kirasaki decides to go for cows more than any other animal. He starts off his hunting process by throwing some rocks at the cows and bulls, which angers them to the point of attacking him. Then, he launches a mid-air movement combo to take all of them down within 1 second. He finishes the job with a slash attack, and this is all it takes to finish off the monsters and turn them into ready meat. Kirasaki admits that even though these cows and bulls are not that strong, they can still be dangerous if they are in groups. Of course, it won't be a problem for him if he is just careful and keeps his guard up. Epsilon shows up yet again and congratulates Kirasaki for growing to level 4 and learning the skill Adapt. He is happy to hear this, although Adapt just sounds like a passive skill which will help him adjust to his environment. He confesses that even though he does not have a combat class, he has just been learning boring skills, and it's making him annoyed. Now, Kirasaki comes across his 2nd treasure chest and decides to analyze it first with his skill. After all, Epsilon did say that such chests could be trapped. Luckily for him, there is no trap in this treasure chest, and he gets a pair of jumping boots. He decides to try them on and give these boots a test run, after which we see him taking off almost as if he is about to fly. Our hero can jump a lot higher now thanks to these boots, and he wonders what would happen if he were to use a skill at the same time. Kirasaki gives it a go, but it leads to a rather excessive display of power, and he ends up crashing down. His acceleration has also increased by a lot thanks to the boots, and now he is on the floor with a pair of broken legs. It's actually quite funny to Kirasaki because he had never faced such injuries, even when he was dealing with monsters. As a matter of fact, his greatest form of damage has come at his own hands, and it makes for an ironic situation. Having said that, it's not like Kirasaki can avoid using such amazing boots, because mobility is his trump card. Not only will the boots stabilize Kirasaki's air combos, they will also help him run away from any monsters that may seem like they're too deadly to fight. He knows that he can't just pass away and leave his maid girls alone, so at least Kirasaki looks out for his slaves. Now, one morning at the cafeteria, we learn that the low-rank hero Isekai'd was making Alice his exclusive maid. Our hero has already engaged in shady acts with her, so it does not make a difference to him, and he claps for Isekai'd with all his maid girls. Seeing Kirasaki with 4 other cute and curvy maids does seem to irk Isekai'd, and it's clear that he does not like him. Of course, our hero seems to be familiar with this because it stems from an introverted nature. Either way, he only wishes happiness upon both Isekai'd and Alice for their future. Meanwhile, at the mid-hero mansion, intrusive thoughts are understatements for the debauchery that is going on over there. The heroes have become addicts to a whole other level, and they discuss how they almost lost their lives while taking down a black cow monster the other day. It took 4 mid-rank heroes to finally defeat the beast, and even though it may not have been a final boss, it was still pretty tough. At the same time, we see Kirasaki defeating the exact same monster all by himself, which means that he is on an even higher level than the mid-rank heroes. After this, Epsilon congratulates our hero for completing the 2nd floor of the dungeon and gaining management rights to it. Kirasaki does not understand what management rights mean, so he asks if he has done something special over here. It could have to do with the giant black gem that dropped from the big black cow after he defeated it. However, the gem broke away as soon as it dropped because the monster fell on it. Now, Kirasaki had thought that the cow was just an alternate colored trash mob, but his diving attack was way too powerful, and he ended up taking down a boss. The name of this floor is the Rumble Pasture, and Kurosaki has been able to conquer it without really breaking a sweat. With that, the stairs towards the third floor of the dungeon open up and Kurosaki walks down in order to take a peek at what's waiting for him. He knows that he can use his magic sword more often now that he is at a higher level, so it should be fine for him. That's when he sees that the third floor is filled with giant carrot monsters. He is not allowed to rest, even for a second, as a scary scarecrow attacks him with all its might. It's a strong fighter, which makes our hero admit that the levels of these monsters grow a lot, especially when you move from floor to floor. The battle against this scary scarecrow goes from bad to worse as it starts spinning around in circles aggressively. It's almost as if it's some kind of cyclone, but Kurosaki is not one to back down from a challenge, so he charges up and then comes crashing down on his opponent. He proceeds to unleash a finisher move on the scary scarecrow, and is able to follow it up with a series of slash attacks. However, he has been fooled by the monster as it is still alive and well. The scary scarecrow then pierces Kurosaki through his torso, and things are not looking good for him at all. Now, the monster prepares its own finisher move, which is a giant drill attack. Kurosaki feels that this might just be the end of him, but then he remembers that he has a whole harem of maid girls to take care of. That's all the motivation he needs to break out of this trap, and then he goes all out against the scary scarecrow. It's an absolutely brutal display of strength, as Kurosaki gives it all he has against his opponent. He goes from one attack to the other in a matter of seconds, and even takes out the monster's drill. This is still not enough to take it down since it is the final boss of this floor. But Kurosaki has the power of cute maids and intrusive thoughts on his side, so he continues the fight. He unleashes one more finisher move, and the slashes are good enough to finally defeat the scary scarecrow. It was a hard-fought battle for Kurosaki, as can be seen in the way he is barely holding on to his breath. But he has been able to emerge victorious. With this, he has also acquired the management rights to the third floor of the dungeon, which is called the Demeter Plant Floor. What awaits Kurosaki moving forward? How many more maids are going to become his exclusive slaves? And what exactly is the deal with the way people treat heroes in this world? Like, share, and subscribe if you like this story and want to know what happens next. If this video gets enough love, then I'll be sure to cover Volume 2 just for you. Okay then, I'll see you next time.